Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited you could be here. Look, today we're talking about two very, very, very important topics. First of all, we're really going to dive into your actual brand. We're going to talk about the blueprint to entrepreneur branding and what you need to know to get your branding spot on. So really people gravitate to you. It's kind of like a customer magnet where they want to come and do business with you. But you can't do that unless you really get a grasp on social media as well. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about social media and what you should be knowing, what's hot right now, what you should be focusing on to be able to get the most exposure, really at no cost, using social media to be able to make it happen. And with us today to have this conversation is Ryan White. Now, Ryan's actually a seven-figure entrepreneur, a digital entrepreneur. He's an influencer, he's an investor. He's also a press contributor and a speaker. Now, he's actually the founder of Social Revolution, which is actually a globally recognized social media marketing company that helps business and personal brands expand their digital footprint and increase brand awareness online. Now, through Social Revolution, Ryan actually has managed social media strategies for multiple seven and eight-figure industry leaders, while also curating a personal online network of more than 6 million people worldwide. Wow. Right. And his expertise has positioned him as a trusted authority in building influence and driving digital growth. Ryan's insights and success have actually been featured on podcasts such as Entrepreneurs on Fire, Underdog Empowerment, The Daily Grind, The No Excuse Show, and The Millionaire's Hot Seat. He has also appeared on live television shows, including Good Morning America, LA Land in the West Hollywood, and The Mountain Morning Show in Park City, Utah, sharing his knowledge on entrepreneurship and the power of social media. Ryan, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us today.
What's going on, man? I appreciate you for having me. I'm excited to kind of dive into this social media and personal branding thing with you.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, personal branding. So, first of all, with branding, I think most times when people think about branding, they're not thinking about them as an individual. They're thinking about their business and branding for their business. Is that how they should be thinking of it?
It's interesting because, people genuinely connect with other human beings. And so I feel like we're in the digital era now, right? Where a lot of people are looking you up in the online space. Even if you walk into, say, a traditional brick and mortar, no one goes to the restaurant these days without, looking someone up online. They want to see the TikTok, they want to see the Instagram, they want to see the menu and how the food looks. And so while we're building a brand, I feel like if we can incorporate a personal brand, a face that people can actually attach to and build connection, that is the best way to go. So we've seen a huge kind of shift, if you will, in the last 10 years of how people are going about leveraging social media and brand building. And you're starting to see kind of these the faces of these brands emerge, and so they tend to convert at a much higher level if, say, I can go online and I can attach to a person who is putting out specific content on that branded page or that website that we're consuming. It just kind of ties in and builds, kind of bridges the gap between you and said business much better than just a traditional logo would.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Why do you think that personal branding is so important?
I think it's important because, number one, I think connection is one of the best things that you can get from having a personal brand. Number two is when you're creating a personal brand, because it is being curated, you're able to kind of control that first impression. And so I know, like, when we're thinking about social media and when we're thinking about digital PR, which we kind of leverage digital PR to build someone's kind of Google authority, right? Helping them look good on the first page of Google. Because, fun fact, 92% of people actually don't scroll past page one. So if we're not presented well there, that's a huge problem for a business or a personal brand. And so we always tell people, hey, listen, in 2025 and moving into 2026, there are really two main places that every single business has to kind of check off and do well, and that's search and social. And so those are the two sandboxes we play in. And to answer your question, on both of those platforms, if we do it the right way, we can actually control the first impression that people are seeing from the very first touch point. And as we know, we genuinely only get one first impression. And so we need to make sure that it's a very strong one. And so this is kind of the game that we're playing when we help people go and build this.
So, what are you doing or what do you recommend to have somebody have a strong presence when it comes to their branding?
Yeah, so for me, there's like all these different tiers, but I'll kind of start with the high level ones. Number one for me on social, for me about so everything that we do at our company is helping someone build this idea, right, of strong credibility and influence online. And so with that, I always say step one, we got to get your social media right. So when we set goals, what I call dream outcomes for brands need to have a goal to get to at least 100,000 plus followers. That's just the number of where we see when we're driving targeted traffic to a profile. That is the kind of the point at which conversions really spike. And I think the reason for that is there's a big difference between someone having, like, perceptionally, think about perceived credibility. Perceptionally, there's a difference between someone having 2,000 and 120,000. And so the idea is if we can get someone to 100,000 plus very quickly, then we can remove them not being able to close or attract people or have low trust scores with prospects. We can remove lack of credibility and influence off the table as an issue as to why your funnel's not working. So for us on social, on all the platforms, our goal is we got to build at least 100,000 plus on those channels. Okay. And we have ways and strategies at which we go and do that. Basically, we're just experts at driving traffic. And as a result of us being able to drive traffic, pages grow. Okay. Once we have that in place, then we kind of move away from social and into what we call kind of search. And so the idea is when typically the first thing when someone hears about, Ty Crandall, they're going to usually go find you up on your social media profile and they're going to look you up and they're either going to choose to move closer to you or take a step further away from you based on what they see. So the idea is we want them to take a step closer. Second thing they're going to do is they're going to go over to Google and they're going to type in Ty Crandall on Google, and they're going to see what shows up there. And so the idea is if we have 10 to 25 reputable publications, local national television, podcast interviews, which is why I say yes to things like this, or hosting a show is very valuable as well. That all obviously adds and will SEO for your keywords on page one of Google so that people go, wow, this guy's actually credible. He's obviously an expert in this specific topic that he's involved with. And so the idea is once we can kind of check those two boxes, naturally, the natural step is for people to lean in and at least take whatever that next step is. And so for a lot of people, it's, hey, book your free consultation or come get said free thing, free session, right? If I'm a traditional brick and mortar, and it will naturally get more people to want to walk through the door with you.
So it sounds like you're saying social is really the first step, and it's very important. And you're also talking about 100,000 on these channels. Most people never try and never accomplish that through
Yep.
organic. So are you getting there then through paid? Are they paying through ads ultimately to then push traffic there? Or what are some of the strategies you're using to get somebody to that 100,000 level?
For sure. So, and that's a great point. So let's talk about something I always have in conversation one with any new client, right? So always kind of there's a little bit of education involved, but there's only really two paths that you can grow with social, right? The very first path is the obvious one where you're just creating content, you're trying to stay fresh, you're trying to stay on trend, and you're just hitting go and hoping that the algorithm basically plays to your favor. This is what people quote unquote call growing organically. And there's nothing wrong with this approach. In my experience, after doing this for a decade and working with 3,000 plus people, if you're going to reach 100K, unless you're an anomaly, and we'll talk about some anomalies, right? But unless you're like somebody who's done something just super powerful, I like to think of like the Dan Martells of the world, the Alex Hermosies of the world, right? These are people who had already went out in the real world and got real results, like sold companies for 45 plus millions of dollars, right? They had a very successful career. They are very well-spoken individuals. And so naturally, when they just start creating content organically, they're already going to be the cream of the crop, right? They're 0.1%. And so for them, when you hear about these studies of people going, hey, Alex, I think he built like 0 to a million in 6 months or less. That is not typical for the average person coming on and creating, because obviously there is a stratosphere between his results and the average person that's creating content. So typically there's a 5 to 10 year journey from the day someone decides that I want to go basically grow on this platform and I'm going to start creating content and doing it organically. That's usually a 5 to 10 year commitment at minimum. That's if you get there. But if you get there, it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 years typically, unless you're an anomaly. So the other side of the coin, right? And the people that we naturally attract are people who have been kind of playing around in the organic realm for, half a decade, and they've had very little to no results. Some of these people have been kind of rocking 2 to 3 years, and they've gotten, 5,000, 6,000 followers. Most of these people haven't hit 10K yet, but they're spending a lot of time, money, and energy, obviously, to go kind of do this thing and make it happen. They just feel like, it's not really going anywhere. And so I tell people, well, listen, there is another train that's available to you. You're on one train. And so a lot of these people, when they're looking to get off that train and get on another train, I'm just mentioned that we do have this sector that we play in, which is basically your social media growth agencies. And so this is where we come in. And over the last 10 years, we have different strategies that we deploy on different platforms, because obviously not every strategy is created equal on different platforms. So about 85% of our clientele are Instagram growth clients, because we've found that with our target kind of demographic, Instagram's kind of become that 2025 business card that people are kind of walking into a networking event and throwing around and getting connected with more so than your traditional card. So we always tell people, hey, listen, let's start with Instagram. And once we kind of get that situated, we will add on these other channels. And so before I can direct someone, because we have a handful of strategies that we can deploy, and I can sit here and take another, 30 minutes if we want to kind of talk about each individual one. But typically what I need to know is like, hey, why do we want to grow this audience? Because if I walk into a stadium of 100,000 people, get on the mic and say, hey, who wants to have 100,000 plus followers? Everyone's going to raise their hand. Now, when I ask the follow-up question of why do you want to grow it, it's going to be different for different people, right? A keynote speaker may want to book more gigs or double his keynote fee, whereas an author may be looking to obviously move more of her book, so it's more direct conversion. Well, we would dictate what strategy and pathway we take and would recommend to someone based upon what we're trying to accomplish. So one path could be very much about just building the perceived credibility. Think keynote speaker wanting to go from 10K to 25K in keynote fee, which is largely in part based on how the event planners perceive their reach and credibility to be when they say yes. So that's a totally different path than someone who is a high ticket coach that has a $10,000 program and they're looking obviously to book 10 new clients next month. So there's a lot of different things we can do. Again, I'll just go back to tie this all in to just kind of say, we've over the years built up an infrastructure, a pool, if you will, of about 200 to 300 accounts that we control and manage. And when you add up all the followers on these accounts, we control about an 800 million follower network. And that just means we control a lot of traffic each day. And as a result of controlling traffic, we can drive that traffic to clients' accounts and get them to grow guaranteed each month.
So if you're driving traffic to grow those accounts, they're real followers, obviously, and
100%.
describe it. But those followers aren't going to really, those are just more to pad the number than it will be to get like real quality followers that are going to actually potentially do business for you. It's to be able to create that social proof per se that people want to see to then really decide they want to start following, and then the real stuff kind of continues on from there.
Yeah, so this is good. Let's dive into it and go kind of a little bit, pull back some layers here. So if someone is, if they want more perceived credibility, we're driving 100% always real people. The way I like to describe it, and so we would run that specific strategy that you're referring to, just driving traffic and growing it, would say more top of funnel people. That's how I like to describe these people. They're just more top of funnel. We would do that more for like a keynote speaker or someone who, let's just say, is a DJ or an entertainer, and they're looking to book more gigs as a result of perceived credibility. That would work well for them.
Sure.
That also would allow them to convert more of the organic traffic they're already getting, because most pages are already getting people kind of coming in. They might have been done a collaboration post or been found through a hashtag or something of that sort. There are people that are coming to the page, and the problem is if the credibility and the trust factor on the page isn't high enough, they're not converting enough of that organic traffic that they could otherwise be. So that's one play. The other play is, let's talk about specifics. Okay. We do have strategies where we can drive very specific ICPs. So think ideal customer profiles. We can drive those people to client pages, and we have different methods we do this. One quick method is we have like a software tool where we can go in and leverage like viewing and liking and engaging with people's stories to drive traffic back to a client's profile. We have our own what we call our revelation reach system, where we actually will build out subsidiary accounts within your niche for you. So think about a spoke of a wheel, right? Clients' channels in the middle. We build all these subsidiary accounts, the spokes of a wheel around it, and then we basically are kind of your hired DM outbound team to messaging your ICPs, your dream customers, if you will, and basically with very specific messaging, kind of driving awareness campaigns back to the client profile to get people there so that they can see the content and they can choose to follow them or not. Now, what I believe, because I really want to tie the knot on this is like one of the key anchors of everything that we do, is our process. After doing this for 10 years, in my experience, in order to do social at the highest level, there's two key ingredients that has to be in any social strategy in order for it to be successful. And so really it's kind of taking the two worlds I just explained and bringing them together, because here's the idea. We all know of people that have like millions of followers, but they're making no money, and we don't want that to be our clients. Okay. And so you can't just grow an account to say 3 million followers and it be all fake bots and stuff like that, which is where people go wrong, because now you just have a dead account and you're making no money. On the flip side, we also know many people who spend a ton of money, 6 figures a month, on Facebook ads, Google ads. So they're driving very targeted traffic back to a profile or a landing page, basically virtually to a brand or a personal brand, but the conversion rate isn't where they think it should be. right? And what we find when we kind of get in there and kind of look in the weeds of why it's not happening, what we've kind of found, we see the same kind of trend over and over, that a lot of times that targeted traffic is going to a brand with very little to no credibility in the social media space. And so as a result of that, they're not converting. And so we all agree that if we had two pages, right? If I took your page right now and let's just say theoretically it had 10,000 followers and I created an exact duplicate of that and grew it to 120K, everything else stays the same and we drive traffic to both, which one's going to convert at the higher level? We all understand that piece. So once we get that piece, we can understand why it's important to have some form of social proof on the account, and then figure out, okay, once we get the social proof, let's bring in the targeted traffic to that asset. And that is where the magic happens. And so usually people either optimize for one and not both. And that's typically why people aren't playing the game at the highest level.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. They get to my channels, what should be there? Like, how important are things like, uniformity of message, of, my profile picture, stuff like that being congruent across platforms? Uh,
Absolutely.
let's just start there.
Yeah, for sure. You want to have congruency because, and I always tell people, to have a seven-figure brand, you really only need kind of one platform. So if you're just starting out, or, we either pay with time or money, right? And so in order to, if you have a small team and it's just you, right, you're a solopreneur, just pick one channel. For me, if I had to start over, which is, I would do the same thing I did again because it worked extremely well. I would start with Instagram and, basically build there first. And then as you kind of get yourself into a position to where, hey, I have good credibility and I've gained traction, then we can start looking at adding other channels. But the end goal should always be to get a presence on all channels, because there will always be people who find you, say, on Twitter. I'm not the biggest Twitter fan. I'm not the biggest like LinkedIn user every day, but I build there because I understand there are still people who will find me on those platforms who aren't every day on Instagram. And so that's super important, trying to be omnipresent. Now, for you, you asked, some questions in terms of what should be there. I think obviously consistency, putting out good stuff, right? Quality over quantity is huge. So many people are focused these days on going and trying to churn, multiple posts a day to try to keep up with the Joneses. So I think of like the Dan Martell and the Alex Hermosis. They're like, well, they're posting 4 to 6 times per day. So should I. And the reality is, it's like we don't want to jeopardize quality trying to hit those quantity numbers. I mean, you got to understand those guys have massive budgets and big teams to make that happen. And so if you're starting out, I mean, literally just try to focus on at a minimum 3 times per week. Can you post a minimum 3 times per week? And then as you get better and more efficient, can you get that to now I'm posting maybe 3 or 4 times a week, or every day, Monday through Friday, to eventually the idea is I want to post every day, right? In a perfect world, we post once a day without jeopardizing quality. That is the big kind of component there. And so there are certain things when someone works with us that we look at the username, we look at the bio setup, we look at your story highlights. Obviously, there's a rhyme and a rhythm that has to happen for, if you're optimizing for conversions. But the biggest thing is, yeah, just making sure that you're being consistent, you're putting out good stuff. I'll kind of give you this little golden nugget. This is how I personally view content with someone that works with us. A lot of people choose not to ever get started because they see content as this huge Mount Everest, and they constantly have to be on the kind of the hamster wheel of creating and posting. I chose not to look at content that way with our clientele. I like to look at a content hub of we're trying to build basically like 90 to 100 pieces of content that basically we can post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is how we do it. We post 3 times per week. I'd say 65%, roughly 65% of our clients post a minimum 3 times per week. And so for us, the idea is if we're posting 3 times a week, that's 12 times per month. So if I'm going out there and I have 90 pieces of content, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. We can rinse and repeat content up to, honestly, until we get all 90 pieces up on the feed. And then the idea is now only once or twice a year do I have to come back and refilm, because the idea is most people don't even understand what they had for breakfast yesterday. They definitely don't know what you posted 90 days ago. And statistically, so the data shows that most people only scroll about 12 to 15 posts down the Instagram feed before they're distracted and kind of go down the rabbit hole somewhere else anyway. So it kind of takes this huge, I need to constantly be creating new stuff all the time, every day, and build this huge, massive team, versus for the solopreneur, because I'm speaking to most people probably listening to this, don't have a team of 10 plus people. They're probably less than 10 employees doing most of the stuff themselves. And so the idea is, okay, how can we go and create 90 pieces of top content that can be rinsed and repeated? And the idea is at the end of the year, okay, and also rinse and repeating I like because it gets you the 6 to 7 marketing touches that's required for someone obviously to become familiar enough with your stuff to want to become a customer. The second thing is remember we're also getting organic new followers. So when you post it the second, third, fourth time, there are fresh eyes that never saw it those times. So, but I feel like there's a huge misconception with people. I know that I used to think this way is if we posted it one time, we almost think, oh, that piece of content's being used. I can't touch that again. And that is a huge, huge, huge problem. We should not think that way because a lot of times we should actually be taking at least once a year to review, right? What is our best performers? And that is the exact pieces of content that we basically, as the years go on, the idea is, okay, this is an ever evolving, dynamic 90 to 100 pieces of content. And now it's filled with only my top performers. And those top performers are what basically is getting rinsed and repeated as we move forward. And so you can build a really great content engine without the idea of I need to constantly be in the studio filming new stuff.
Yeah, and I love that idea. And somebody presented this to me one day, and it never changed, and it changed my way of thinking of it. It's like, do you remember what you did content wise last week? And I Ryan, straight up, like I don't even remember what I filmed last week. So it's like if I don't remember what I filmed myself, then somebody out that sees, 8,000 in a day, which it is now up to like 8,000 things we see in a day, like they're not going to remember either. I think people lose sight of that.
For sure. Yeah, very solid. And I think that if we can get more people to understand and have that shift, more people would actually become producers instead of consumers.
Sure.
Because most of the world, obviously, as you know, are consumers and they're not actually producing. And I feel like if more people kind of got in the realm of producing and just sharing their heart and their passions with the world, we'd have a happier place, right? Because we feel good when we're sharing what we love with other people.
Yeah, and you talk about the heart and passion, and then you also talk about quality of content. So, what do you see work well out there? And I don't need to know like you do a hook and blah blah blah, but I mean like what kind of content? If I own a business and I love what I do, I love business credit. Like what kind of stuff should I be focused on that makes me happy? Because if I'm not happy producing it, I'm not going to do it. And then
Facts.
also makes the people out there happy to receive it. Like what do you find that works well in that content?
This is great. This is great. This is good stuff. We're getting into the meat of it. So the way I like to specifically do it with Instagram, Instagram is kind of vertically. If you like the visual, we have like the 3 vertical columns. So it kind of goes back to when we're creating a brand or doing a content strategy, we really think of what are the 3 pillars or anchors of a brand. And so let's just to give you a quick example. Let's say for me, it's faith, family, and freedom. Freedom being kind of my business stuff. And so the idea is we could dedicate a pillar or an anchor to a column on Instagram. And now that's going to give me basically structure and clarity on what to post. So the idea is, say this specific column or post one is going to be something that is family oriented. I want to showcase on my personal brand trips I'm taking, fun I'm having with my family, right? And so the middle part of that, if I'm obviously, I'm a Christian, I like to share faith-based stuff. So it's like my second post on my feed could be something that's faith related, and that gives me structure. And then the third one on my personal brand could be business related. So hey, what are the strategies, the case studies, all of the hacks that I'm learning that I think could get people to the next level, and that could be a third column. And the cool thing is if we maintain that structure, it's very easy to schedule out because as long as we stay in that order, the feed, number one, looks very good aesthetically, top to bottom. And we know exactly kind of what's coming next. Because if I can look at my feed and go, okay, I just posted the freedom post. So I know the next post that I'm going to schedule out is going to be my family stuff. And then to kind of take this a step further, in my team's iPhone or Google Drive folder, we have 3 folders with the 3 pillars. And when I see something or I get an idea that kind of sparks my inspiration of, hey, I know exactly what I want to use for that, I'd either screenshot it and file it away in the folder in my iPhone that I know is going to go into that specific pillar on Instagram. Or if I'm using Google Drive because my team needs access, I'll file it in a Google Drive folder or a Dropbox folder where they can go extract it. And that's what we use internally, transparently. Like when we go and schedule for my personal brand and for Social Revelation, that is how we go and do it. And so I think that having kind of the 3 pillars and kind of aligning it that way, that really can help you figure out, okay, what's something fun and playful that I can incorporate in this content strategy while also making sure that it's not getting too skewed family wise or too skewed business wise. right? And we can maintain balance there. And then the other kind of little last thing I'll give you is 80-20 rule. So 80% of your content needs to be consistent and predictable. People like consistency. They're going to choose to follow you because of what they see. So they're going to expect more of that from you. And then 20% should be random because we like random, fun, playful stuff. So if you actually follow some of the greatest marketers, about 2 out of every 10 posts, you'll notice, wow, that was off the wall. And that kind of is like, will hook people a little bit better because it's off of the cusp of what the norm is. And so 80-20 principle works really well for content as well.
Now, if you look at like these three pillars, for example, and do you really do it like pillar like it's your example? If right
Yep.
is entrepreneur, like business stuff, is all right always entrepreneur? Or are you just taking that and kind of still mixing it across those three different the three different?
Yeah, I think visually and aesthetically, it just depends on what you're optimizing for. So let's just say like a designer, an interior designer, they want aesthetic on their profile. So I think visually structured vertically is super important. Now, if you're someone who like has something massively important happens to you, or you're about to launch a new program and you're like, I got to wait 2 more posts or 2 days before I can post it, you may not necessarily want to be like so much by the book and keep it like perfectly synergistic, because at the end of the day, ultimately, where are most people going to see you? Most people are going to see you when they go to their home feed and scroll and, oh, there's the post. So
Right.
the idea is you got to kind of find the balance that works for you. This is just obviously an example, and you can kind of stick to it. You can stick to it exactly as is, or you can have a little bit of flex and freedom in there while keeping the kind of the three pillars aligned on the actual page as people scroll.
Yeah, I love it. And listen, if you're watching this, you're hearing from somebody that's Ryan's got like 3 million plus followers on his Instagram alone, right? So he knows what he's talking about. And it's not just he's got 3 million followers. Like if you look at his stuff and look at his channel, which you should, then you'll actually see he's got, hundreds of thousands of engagement on what he's got. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. And that's actually officialryanwhite.com, officialryanwhite.com. You can actually check that out. I recommend that you do, and I recommend that you become one more of his $3 million, 3 million plus of subscribers out there. So, what are some of the mistakes you see? Where do people screw this up? Because you're at a high level, a lot of people will want to give even a fraction of the level you have. Like, what mistakes are they making to just mess up their personal brand, not get to the social, levels that they want to get to?
Yeah. Number one is inconsistency, posting when you want to, right? And not creating an actual calendar, because at the end of the day, if someone comes into a brand and it's like, hey, he posted 3 times last month and then he skipped a month and then he posted again, it's like there's nothing for someone to want to latch on to. And so for me, if you go look at me, like my channel, you may be like, I try to post, at least monthly to stay relevant, but I'm not posting like every day. But understand that I built my file. What you're seeing is 10 years worth of work. So it's like I grew a following. I grinded through all of those early days. And so I kind of shifted away from posting business stuff and moved more into just sharing an actual, like using it as a personal account. And I more leverage now the business page to post more of the business related content. And so there was a little bit of shift that happened. But when you're first starting out, what's important is consistency. And I see so many people, they start, they stop, they start, they stop. And it gives me the analogy of like, if you're going to watch a movie and you need to pop popcorn, well, you can either put popcorn in there and put it on, 2.5 minutes and get popcorn, or if you keep opening the door every 30 seconds and closing and doing another 30 seconds, but open the door, you can do that for, 10 minutes and still not have the kernels popped. Because the idea is you're losing the momentum and you didn't allow it to cook long enough for it to pop. So that is number one, is consistency, right? You got to have consistency to create the momentum. Number two is Instagram has officially declared they're no longer a photo sharing app. They're actually a video sharing platform now. And so we are moving to short form video, whether you like it or not. And so I still see a lot of people kind of grasping on the idea of like, single post, carousel post. And I'm not saying it can't be used in your strategy. It 100% can be used in your strategy. Photos and carousels can still do well, but make no mistake, we're seeing like 35 to 45% increase in engagement on short form video. And so again, if you're starting out and you don't have momentum, I would optimize literally for Reels. Reels right now is being promoted. Um, Understand that anytime a platform makes a shift, if you get on board with that shift and that trend, you will naturally get more organic virality and reach. Why? Because the platform wants to support users who are in alignment with their vision. And so this is also important that if you see a new feature, if a new feature drops, immediately start using that every day until it almost becomes a weapon for you in like your arsenal of marketing tools. Because what I found is like the early adopters who always use the tools as they're released typically get the most virality from those. And so I know a lot of times we see new features and we're like, oh, I don't need a new feature, so I'm not going to try to learn it. And you're actually leaving a lot of like organic traffic on the table by not doing that. Actually adopt the mindset of like, if I see something new drop, I'm going to immediately start playing with it. And I think just doing that alone would be a golden nugget of leaving this show. And you'll see a lot more results from your social media efforts. And so, yeah, I mean, being consistent, really focusing on reels. The average consumption of a short form video right now of what is performing the best is actually around 6 to 8 seconds. And I know you may be thinking, how in the world am I going to create something that actually is only 6 to 8 seconds? But if you really think about like the trendy stuff, think Instagram and TikTok, that's like, you see something that's attached to a song, and then these people do these little dances, and most of those dances are like, it's something stupid, silly, funny that's 6 to 8 seconds, and those things can kind of take off. And I think the reason it works so well is because when you're doing something like that, not to kind of turn this into you need a solid hook, but the reality is like you have about 2 to 3 seconds to grab someone and stop them in their tracks from scrolling. And the people who can do that will be rewarded. So if you're creating a video, really analyze your video if it's 60 seconds long and try to pull out, okay, where is the meat of this? Where's the most engaging climax of the movie section of this video? Pull out the first 2 to 3 kind of seconds to that, put it at the beginning of your video, and those who basically hook attention earn attention throughout the rest of the video, because the idea is we can spark enough curiosity to get them to want to watch all the way until they see what happened after that point. And so this is kind of like what the biggest movie makers, right? Hollywood, this is what they do with their movie trailers. If you ever watch a movie trailer, they start out with the boom, 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 the action scene, right? And then they take you back to the beginning of the story, and you watch the whole trailer because you're trying to get back to what the action scene was, and they're filling in the gaps along the way. So you can do that with your content. I like to tell it, it's almost like you're becoming your own Hollywood producer, just in your own way, on your own feed. Um, and so once you start playing around with this and you really get good, it's just about getting someone's attention. I'll kind of give this example to tie the loop on this. I have a buddy of mine. He grew his TikTok from like 0 to 1 million followers in less than 12 months. And he's an engineer. So he got an engineering degree and then he rolled over into content. And what he started doing was he was taking basically like these random tools. And the video would start out where he's like literally taking, say, the bottom of a chair, and he's like taking a saw and he's like cutting into the chair. And so immediately when you're scrolling and you're seeing that, you're like, why is he? And it would be like an expensive chair that he went out and like spent probably $5,000 on. So you're like, why is he cutting up this very expensive thing? And so what happens is he gets the attention by basically people seeing that. And then he starts back over with the very first, like, the first thing he did in the sequence of what he's building, and he takes people along on that journey. And people watch the whole thing because they saw this crazy thing they didn't understand at the beginning of the video, and they're sticking around to get the payoff of like, what was he actually doing and what was he building. And so just doing that one small little trick that I just mentioned, he went 0 to 1 million on TikTok in 12 months.
Wow. That's a heck of a nugget, man. Ryan, I could talk to you forever. I love everything you're saying. It's so brilliant. And I think about what you're saying and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I've actually seen stuff like that rarely, but it pulls me in. It keeps me. And it's a whole other way of looking at a hook than what I think we're trained or understand. And I just,
Yeah.
everything you've said, it just makes so much sense, but it's so interesting because it's so unique. I've just never heard anybody talk about this the way that you talk about it. So there's a lot of people that are leaning in, they're enthralled, they want to learn more, and we're kind of getting ready to wrap up. So what should they do? What steps should they take to be able to follow you, to see some of what you're actually talking about on your own channels, and potentially, take a next step to work with you guys as well?
Yeah, so again, my personal website is, officialryanwhite.com. I highly would recommend go over to Instagram. My personal Instagram is at CEO Ryan White. And then the business page is right there in the bio, but it's at social.revelation. Those are two pages I highly recommend you follow. I also have some free goodies on there on my personal page, so feel free to go click the link in the bio and get that. There's a trio of ebooks there where you can get those, no opt-in required. We'll send you those and help you start kind of masking out your pathway to your first 100K. And listen, once there's always kind of two pathways you can take. You can go get access to that information and start applying it immediately, and it will definitely work for you and help your situation. If you want someone to come in and just do it for you, right? Because we're either paying with time or money. So if you are someone who would just rather speak to myself or someone on my team, and you'd rather kind of have it done for you, we're happy to have that conversation with you to see if you're a fit. And there's a link in the bio on my personal Instagram for you to kind of book a call with our team, and we'd love to see how we can help you.
Yeah, I love that. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ty.
All right, so listen, if you're watching this, make sure you go to officialryanwhite.com, officialryanwhite.com. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I mean, you can access his gallery, his blog, you can access his courses, you can actually send them a text right there too. And then you can access those ebooks that he talked about. Now, when you're there, you want to go to the bottom of the page. It's real simple. You just go to the bottom of the page. His Instagram's right there, okay? And his other social media links are right there. So everything you need. And I really recommend, I mean, he lives what he's talking about here. Like this isn't somebody talking about branding that doesn't have a phenomenal brand. Like you can look, like he's got millions of subscribers and followers out there. And these aren't just fake. These are people that are actually engaging. So go down there and see what he's doing. Just go to officialryanwhite.com. Go take less than a minute to subscribe to those social media channels. You can see what he's doing. Now, while you're there, you can go to his Instagram, and he gave you that too. I'm going to put in the show resources. It's at the bottom of officialryanwhite.com. And again, that is at his handle is CEO Ryan White. And if you go there and you go into the bio, you'll be able to get to his link tree. And his link tree, there's a lot of cool stuff you can access right there in the link tree. So a couple different options through the website or go right through his Insta. And then from there, you're able to get to his link tree. Either way, you got to see what he's doing. And then, as he said, there's two ways you could do it. You can spend a ton of time coming and just learning and getting the ebooks and getting courses and learning how to do it and doing it yourself. Well, let's be honest, getting, a fraction of the result that you get if a professional help you. Or if you're to that point where I am, where it's like, my time is more valuable than money, then at that point, then you can get them to jumpstart. And he's already mentioned some of the success of some of the clients and the people that he knows he's helped through here, where they're getting to million, fairly quickly. And again, just 120,000, 100,000 plus makes all the difference. You know it. I know it. We know it. Like we look at people, we look at their social channels, and we look at those engagement, we look at their followers, and that gives us the social proof. And then we lean in and want to learn more. You know it. You do it. I do it. I do too. So there's a lot of reality to what he's saying, and he's giving you so many gems, but you'll get a lot more if you follow his channels, because we only have 30 minutes here. So make sure you check it out at officialryanwhite.com. And you can also go to Insta at CEO Ryan White. And don't forget, when you're at officialryanwhite.com, take a minute, go to the bottom, subscribe to his channels to get regular tips. Thank you very much for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.